Turning a room into a functional recording studio or just a podcast studio for making podcasts, YouTube videos, it's not that complicated and you can do it on a budget by following all of these steps. It doesn't have to cost you thousands of dollars, and also I'll show you some tricks on what to do to minimize the amount of noise leaving the room without completely soundproofing the room, because that's where your cost is going to really skyrocket when you are going to want to eliminate the noise from leaving the room. But there are ways that we can eliminate some noise and it doesn't have to cost you that much money. So the first thing that you should do really is assess the room. How big is the room? If you have a square room, a perfect square, it's going to be a little bit more challenging to acoustically treat. It is still very possible and not that complicated, but it does pose a little bit more challenges because the sound waves will more easily bounce around the room. So if the room is just square, then it can pose some problems. This room right here is almost a perfect square, and there's a huge window right there. I'll just show you. Yeah, right there. Which can pose some reflection issues because obviously that wall is not acoustically treated one bit, but I am using that window for a different purpose. I'm using that window for natural light. And that's the thing, you can use the window for natural light, for sound deadening, and for sound blocking, and I'll go more into detail about that in a few minutes. Now, once you have assessed the room, you have to make sure that you drown out the echo. So the first thing that you want to do before treating the window or the door, you want to treat the walls with sound deadening material, acoustic panels, or acoustic foam. Now, if you want to go the cheaper route, use acoustic foam. If you want to pay a little bit more, but use something that works better, looks better, then use acoustic panels. You can also build your own acoustic panels for cheaper than buying acoustic foam. And I'll have a link to this video a little bit later in this video. So these aren't that expensive, and the good thing is, the thing that most people don't realize is that you don't need that much sound deadening material inside the room to make it sound good. So what I would suggest, 25% of acoustic panels, acoustic foam around the room, and adding some bass straps for those lower frequency noises. I would add them at the very edge of the ceiling. You don't want to add too much acoustic material onto the wall or into the room because you don't want to make the room sound dead. Also, the type of mic that you use makes a world of difference of how much sound deadening material you even need in the room. And also it depends what you're doing in the studio. Are you going to be recording a podcast or YouTube, something like I'm doing, or are you going to be singing? That will require different types of isolation and also different types of microphone. But before all that, let's move on to the door and the window, because if you also don't want your noise to leave the room or too much noise entering the room, then you need to treat those areas. Now let's start with the door, because typically there will be more noise leaving and entering the room because of the door. And it doesn't have to be expensive to treat the door. You can do it for less than $20. You see that gap underneath the door? That's where most noise will come in and out of the room. Now you don't want to completely seal the room off if you don't have proper airflow in the room, but you can add stuff to the door that is temporary and that you can use when you are recording, and then remove it when you are not recording. So that is one thing that you can do, is to add a bottom door sweep to cover that gap. The one that I would recommend are the U-shaped door sweep, because you can just cut them to size, slide them in, and once you're done doing what you're doing inside the room, you can just slide it out, or you can leave it there permanently if you have proper airflow in the room. Now also, if you close it and it just wobbles, it's not that tight, you can easily add a weather strip. Now, adding a weather strip, just a thin, self-adhesive weather strip. Now, don't forget to clean the surface and have it clean and dry so the self-adhesive actually sticks to the door frame, because a lot of the people that says that this doesn't really work that well is because there's a nice layer of dust usually onto the small door frame. Clean that up. Make sure it's dry, and then add your weather strip. You'll notice that when you close the door, it closes a lot tighter. Now, if you don't really have that problem, the door closes tightly, but you see light shining around the door, that will obviously let noise in and let noise out. You can easily fix that by using acoustical sealant. Acoustical sealant, what it does, it stays rubbery over time. It won't crack as the door opens and closes because of all those vibrations, and let noise into the room again. Now, what you'll want to do is add the acoustical sealant all around the door where the door meets the small door frame, and that's where the cracks will usually be. And you can do all this for less than $20. So that's one thing that you can do to the door without actually having to remove the door and switching it out, because most doors inside, most interior doors in a home are hollow core doors. Hollow core doors will let noise in a room a lot easier than a solid core door. But a solid core door will cost about double the price of a hollow door. So that's one thing to consider. If your budget allows it, then you can go and spend about $80 to $150 for a solid core door that will look exactly like all the other doors inside your home if you have a standard door. That's one more thing that you can do to basically treat that door. Another thing is to add some acoustic foam onto the door, because that will absorb some of the noise that you are making and will also make the room sound better. If you don't want to add too much of these and you just want more not as permanent solutions like adding acoustic foam, because if you're just recording an hour a week, then you might not want to completely transform the room. Then what you can do, instead of adding acoustic foam or acoustic panels, you can just go ahead and buy some theater drapes, moving blankets. These types of drapes are a lot more heavy, they're a lot more dense, and they will absorb a lot more noise than just leaving your wall empty and adding a couple of these onto the wall. If you plaster the wall with a bunch of these, if you just hang them around where you'll be talking or recording, and it's just a little bit away from the camera so nobody can see it, what does it matter? It'll make the room sound better. It'll be a cheap alternative for you. I'll have links in the description below of everything I talk about in this video, and it's a pretty good solution. These will translate to the windows, because the window, you can either cover the windows with drapes, heavy drapes that'll soak up the noise, or myself, I didn't do that. I like the natural light coming in, and I don't really need it because of the type of microphone that I am using. So I don't have drapes on the window, and I just leave it just the way it is. A third solution that you can use, if you have a lot of noise coming into the room because of the window, then adding drapes might not be enough, because what this will do, it'll soak up the noise inside the room a lot more than block the noise outside from coming in. So if you want to block the noise, but you can't really block the window, you can actually build what is called a window plug. As you can see, I'm building this. It's DIY. It's not that complicated, and I'll have a link of that video in the description below. Make sure to go watch that after this one, because you can build a window plug that you can easily remove and place back into the window, and it'll stop most of the noise from outside from coming in because of the material that is put into that plug. So that's what you can do to the window. Three things, three options. Now, if you do have light coming into the room and it is sufficient, perfect. But most of the time, it's not sufficient. So you have to go and find some type of light source. One thing that you can use is overhead light, but the problem with overhead lights, as you can see in this video, the overhead light creates shadows under my eyes, so it actually doesn't look that good. And if I would have known that beforehand, I would have used this thing that is out of the camera angle, but I will show you. Yeah. This light. And I'll turn it on. Makes quite a difference, but also, if you have too much light coming from the window, it can actually cast a shadow on one side of your face. So having another light source will eliminate that. Also, having that light source would have eliminated the shadows under my eye. But if you only have one light and you're casting it this way, it will cause a shadow right here. So I actually have two of those lights So if I do use the lights, I would have one there, and then you are nicely illuminated, and those lights are not that expensive. You can get 2 of them for less than $100 on Amazon. Now, where you sit in the room is also important. Where you put your desk, where you put your chair, where you put your microphone. You want to be around between 35 and 40% into the room. You don't want to be too close to a wall because you don't want to have all those reverberations. Another trick that you can use if you want your background to be blurred, just move forward and be a little bit away from the wall. That will focus on you and blur the background. That's a good little trick if you want to have more of the presence focused on you alone. And now, as I said earlier, the microphone is a very important aspect of how the room is going to sound, because the microphone that I'm using, I don't need that much sound deadening material around me to make the audio sound good. The reason why I have a microphone like this is because some of my videos, I am mobile, I go into the garage, I go outside, I film in different locations, so it's a lot harder for me to have an actual stationary microphone. So this is the one I have, is called the Tascam DR10L. It's around $200, give or take $20. I bought it about 3 years ago and it works very well. I am impressed with it because I don't have that much sound deadening material into the room. The only sound deadening material I have is the acoustic panels and some acoustic foam onto the wall behind me. The most important place really should be an acoustic panel behind the camera because that's where my sound waves are going. But if you are always going to be recording in the same space, you'd want a microphone that is good for confined spaces. The one that I'd recommend would be the Shure SM7B. That's a good microphone for podcasting, for singing, for talking, and it works very well. It is a little bit more expensive, a few $100s more than this one, but it does make a difference having great sound. Another important piece of equipment that you should have is a good quality pair of headphones for tracking, because if there are imperfections in the sound, lower frequency noises, then you'll be better able to hear it in the headphones and be able to correct it afterwards or during. Also, most likely you'll have speakers into the room if you are doing some singing. Then if you do have speakers, you'd want to have them on speaker stands, and you also want them to be isolated with acoustic treatment underneath the speakers, because you don't want those lower frequency sound to basically go down into the floor and to create reverberations and just a lot of low frequencies down there. So you want to isolate that, adding some acoustic material underneath the speakers, in between the speaker and the speaker stand. Now onto the ceiling. That's one thing that a lot of people forget to or just don't treat. And there is a lot of sound waves that'll be bouncing off the ceiling. So adding an acoustic panel or a sound cloud, hanging it onto the middle of the ceiling on top of where you will be talking will help absorb some of those sounds. You can also hang some acoustic foam onto the ceiling. Now, one good way to actually install acoustic foam onto the wall that won't damage the wall is, well, I'll just show you. So we changed locations because the easiest and cheapest way to install acoustic foam on your wall is to use spray glue. Yeah, but you're probably wondering, okay, well, if I use spray glue, isn't it gonna do this on my wall? Yes, it will. It'll completely destroy your wall. You'll have to scrape that off if you ever want to remove it. If you go on Google and you ask Google how to install acoustic foam on the wall or ceiling, it'll just tell you to go ahead and use spray glue and then attach it to the wall. What they don't tell you is it leaves a huge mess and you'll be quite disappointed if you need to remove it in a few years. So the way to actually do it correctly and to be able to still use this spray glue, because it makes things a lot easier, buy one of these for 20 bucks. You'll just need maybe a couple of these cans to do your entire wall versus buying command strips. You see, if you just buy command strips, I would suggest you use 2 command strips per acoustic foam, but it's going to cost you a lot of money. Here's a trick. You want to spray the acoustic foam with the spray glue, and then you want to attach it right on a cardboard. Yeah, cardboard. And then you place the cardboard on your wall using 2, maybe 4 command strips. So you've just saved about half of the amount of command strips that you need just to use this. And also, this makes it a lot easier to hang on to the ceiling. This is the way to do it, to really save you a lot of aggravation in the future. Now, using that method makes it a lot easier to hang these onto the ceiling. You won't be hanging them, you'll be using command strips and putting them right onto the ceiling. And that method works perfect to hang them onto the wall because, again, if you just want this to be temporary, just adding some acoustic foam onto cardboard and then hanging that around you or placing them on canvas holders around where you'll be filming or singing out of camera shot, then it's an easy and inexpensive way to make the room sound really good. Now, once all of that is done, the furniture that you would want to use is large plush furniture. The reason why you see a lot of podcast people have a nice couch, a nice plush couch into the room, yes, it's for comfort, but also big materials like that will do a better job at absorbing sound. So just having a blank room with a chair and a desk in the middle and some acoustic panels, yes, it can work, but having a big couch behind the camera or behind you, somewhere in the room where there's a big blank wall, that will help absorb some of the sound waves bouncing around into the room. So that's one good thing to buy. Let me know in the comment section below what you have done or what you would do, or if I forgot something, or if you just have questions, let me know. Also, if you want to know how to build these for cheaper than buying, well, acoustic foam, then watch that video. Thank you very much for watching. Until next time.